Thank you to everyone who's joining. We are going to get started. This webinar is focused on future-ready leadership for global teams thriving in a changing world. And thank you very much to our speaker for today, Nannapat Sage, CEO of Potentia Consulting and executive coach and leadership consultant. So, to share a bit about the International Business Center, we've been designated since 1990 as a National Resource Center by the US Department of Education, which is a Center for International Business, Education, and Research, known as a CIBER. The IBC has been serving the international business community for 30 years as one of 15 centers for international business education and research. So, our main mission is to provide superior education, research, and assistance to businesses, public policymakers, academics, and students on international business and trade. One of the main programs that we have to do this is called the Global Business Club of Michigan. And our main purpose is to serve as a bridge linking Michigan exporters and allies with a wealth of research-driven resources. The two main programs that we have through GBC is the Market Spotlight Series, which is a series of yearly in-person events held around the state that focus on different global markets. These events feature market overviews, a panel of business representatives who share their personal experiences and best practices for the market, and opportunities for networking. We also hold a series of educational webinars, which are yearly webinars held on international business topics, such as the event that you're currently in. To learn more, feel free to visit our website, or you can follow the Global Business Club on LinkedIn. To introduce our speaker today, Nannapat Sage is the CEO of Potentia Consulting and recognized Best Global Executive Coach and Top Leadership Coach in America. She has over 20 years of experience in leadership roles across 5 regions and is dedicated to enhancing leadership effectiveness, developing strategic perspectives, and building high-performing and diverse teams. And with that, I'll pass over to her.
Thank you for a kind introduction, Hannah. So I look forward to be sharing and learning with all of you today. Let me look at this screen share. Are we okay here? Can you see the screen okay? Perfect. Okay. So well, let's dive in then. Future-ready leadership for global teams, thriving in changing world. The objective that I have today is clear, to be sharing the changing business context and trends that for you to be aware of, and to understand the challenges of the global team based on the changes, and then how to navigate the intersection of corporate, local, team cultures so that you can build better alignment, and then explore the frameworks and tools that I'll be sharing at the end for cross-cultural collaboration. So those are the objectives of the webinar today. And Hannah already made an introduction, but briefly, just a tidbit about myself. I originally from Thailand, so my root is Thai, and I've been in the US for just about 10 years. I am also a US citizen as well. The theme of my career has been helping leaders get to the next level of their career, but because I was working in different region and a country, so the context around a global team and leading a global team is my experience. So I'd love to share some best practices and case study with you today. So a global business at a crossroad. Why do I say this? As you might already experiencing and are aware of the changes around that impact the way that we live our life, and then even impact the way that we do the shopping, right? I don't even go out and do shopping for the past few days because of the weather. And the way that we work has shifted as well. So there's a lot of changes um, in the workplace itself. And then as a global business and any business, we have to adapt ourselves with the rapid change, right? To keep up uh, with the change. And if we can't keep up, we all have high risk of not staying relevant and eventually becoming obsolete. The recent survey just came out actually this week from PwC. Almost half of the CEO worldwide saying that their company will remain viable for less than 10 years if they continue its current path. It means that if they're not going to change anything, if they're not going to adapt and pivot, they will not be surviving for the next 10 years. And that's like almost half increase from the survey, last survey increased from 39%, right? So it kept increasing in the way that the CEO is very confident about the business. A few years ago, when the survey like this come out, they're very confident, but because of all the changes, they have less confidence. And these are the proof of how the CEO or the businesses that they can't keep up with the changes. These companies, um, I think some of you might be aware of the brands, right? So we have from different sector, from retail, like Party City closed down, um, Red Lobster restaurant, Vitamin, this is retail again, and then we have real estate. We work body shop, retail, big lot retail, a lot of retail store, even a furniture store. Right? And then when we're talking about different sector, like this is a 300-year-old company from Germany. I can't pronounce the name of the company. It's gonna be wrong. So 300-year-old, five bankruptcy last year. This is a B2B forklift construction company, also five bankruptcy. Fiskar EV company, and then Spirit filed bankruptcy uh, just this month alone. So these are some of the example of the brands and the companies that filed bankruptcy last year, right? So it means that if they're not changing anything, the business and the CEO and the leadership don't change the way that they're doing things these days, in the future, they have high risk of losing the business. And that's because we have very high disruption rate. As you can see the number over here from 2019 to 2023, the disruption index that done by the research done by Accenture surged 183%, right? So as you can imagine, since COVID, our life has gone in the, shift in a different direction. And if you compare from 2011 to 2016, the disruption index was only 4%. So if you can imagine when we're talking about professional working in a company, back then we're talking about, oh, transformation project, right? During 2011 to 2016, you might have one or two projects a year, right? But then when we're talking about transformation projects in companies or even in organizations, anything that you have to change, you're talking about 10 per year, right? So 10 projects per year. So you probably have more than projects, transformations and change projects than the actual work, right? So that's the shift that you would probably feel. So if you feel a little bit overwhelmed and there's a lot of change, a lot of things that's going on, um, in the company, outside the company, in your life, that's normal because of this surge in the disruption index. So what are those index? So here are the six drivers of disruption. The first one, we all know that technology. When technology change, it affects the way that we do things. Personally, professionally, company, everything, right? Right now, everybody is looking into AI. And before this, like 15 years ago or 20 years ago, it was something else. It was more mobile phone, right? And more, a little more mobile. And now when we're talking about AI and 5G all together, that accelerate the technology shift. The next index is geopolitics. With geopolitics, all the disruption happen, and freshly this week alone, we have the new president in the office, right? And executive orders came out already. And it's not only that; it's like the trade, policy, wars, all these geopolitics issues that also affect the way that the business is running. Consumer and social, as I just mentioned at the beginning, we have probably we probably don't remember how we live if you like, my age, 20 years ago. How do we live without Google Map, right? I don't know because I go I go everywhere with Google Map these days, right? How I shop, I don't go out to retail store as much anymore. And how we interact, social, TikTok, get connected through Facebook is so different. Talent, the shift in the talent space, we'll go dive into the detail in the next slide. And then economics, straightforward. But the biggest disruption of all is climate. It's because we can't expect things to happen. We can be prepared for it, but we can't be prepared all the way. For example, the fire in California a few weeks ago. The damage of the fire was around 250 billion to $275 billion of that damage alone, and that will affect um, the the first quarter the GDP of the country. So definitely that's the biggest one. Now this week alone, in Florida they have snow, 6 inch of snow by the beach, and they have no facility to be able to manage. So there's a lot of disruption in the area. So that's why climate is the biggest disruption because we can't prepare for it. Everything else we can probably look into the trend, right? So these are the index that what we need to be aware of, what's going on, why we have a lot of changes, and how the business is moving. And here I'd like to share with you the global workforce shift, which is on the talent index. Like there are major shifts that going to happen that will reshape the way that the global workforce going to be in the next 5 years. Oops. Okay. The first one, baby boomer will leave the workforce altogether. For the past 10 years, 10,000, about 10,000 baby boomers leaving the workforce every day for the past 10 years, right? So now for the next 5 years, they will probably leave altogether. Gen X will start to retire, right? And um, the main generations in the workforce will be millennial and Gen Z. This one, AI agents will be your team members. And I saw the video from Mark Zuckerberg the other day, and he was saying that there'll be more AI agents than the number of the workforce in the future. And I don't know how that gonna affect the way that we work as well, right? So we will have um, increasing workforce from AI agents. So that I put that in as a demographic shift because that's what we will have to deal with. And then Gen Alpha will enter the workforce. This year, 2025, Gen Alpha will turn 15, then they will start driving. And some of them already enter the workforce in a part-time capacity. So in the next 5 years, they will already have some full-time jobs, right? So they will enter the workforce. Like with all these trends and change and shift within the business dynamics and all over the world, this is what we need to be aware of. That's why I said business at a crossroad, and everybody who are employee in the business will have to be aware of that as of all the shift. And with this shift in the workforce as well, as a leader, you know, things are changing and leadership must evolve. If we don't change the way that we lead the team or work with our team, it won't work. So the traditional leadership that rely on command and chain of command and control and focus on efficiency only will not work. It hasn't been working for the past 10 years anyway, when you're talking about, increasing engagement and things like that. So because it hasn't been working, it won't work anymore. So the way that people need to lead the team and collaborate will need to shift. With all that, those are all the trends that I like to share with you all to be aware of as we are working in a global context. Now, I like to share with you the challenge of global teams, right? When we're talking about global teams, these days, global teams could mean that you're working within one country and then with different states. That, could consider a global team at work as well because you have very similar dynamics. So, what are the dynamics and the challenges here? Navigating complexity and interconnected world within the global and remote team, right? So when you make a decision in one location, it affects the rest of the organization. It affects the rest of the world. You make a decision in the US, it also impact the team who's sitting elsewhere in Europe, in Asia, in Africa. So because it's interconnected. How you solve a problem here or the problem create over there will affect us here. So that's how interconnected we are in the world these days. Accelerating organizational velocity. Um, this one, because of the change, because of the disruption, companies need to adjust and change along the way. So they need to change their business model. They need to restructure. They need to merge to survive. They need to buy new business to gain more um, advantage in the market, right? So these are the changes that's going to happen more often. So if your company um, haven't been doing any restructuring, to be expected there'll be some changes due to all those disruption that I just mentioned. So that is to be expected. So don't get panic. And within a global team context, when the team change across the globe, right? So how are we going to be able to engage, motivate, and inspire the team to perform? That's also the consideration because we're not sitting in the same location. The third, challenge is the cultural diversity. It come with the territories of managing or leading or working with a global team. You're working with people from different location, cultures, and diversity, right? So that come with the challenge in itself. And then the last one, managing self, is the most critical part here because to manage and navigate the complexity to be able to ensure that you collaborate with other people, different cultures and nuance, and the change within a company with the structure, team change, organization change. There's a lot. So, you as an individual are to get overwhelmed and be able to work effectively, with all the nuance that's going on outside of you, right? So these are um, the challenges that I think they're the main theme of like the global team that they have to be aware of, and also that's what's going on currently. Um, I will give you some more context with example in later on. So as a global team players, team leaders, um, global leader, when you're thinking about leading a global team, this is the chart that I call multidimensional thinking. You think about different layers when you manage, when you lead, when you navigate the team, right? So the first one that I just mentioned, the complexity of the business. This is the context that you need to be aware of. Things are moving around all the time. And then within the company itself, it has a corporate culture. So each company has their own culture that they need to navigate. Um, Coca-Cola is different than Pepsi when it comes to the company culture. The way they work are different. right? So this is another layer to think about. And then within the company has team culture. And I'm sure that you can tell that your team culture is probably different than your peer team, right? Most of the time, the team culture model the leadership of the team leader, right? So if the team leader doesn't work well together with another team, that sometimes create conflict within teams as well. So the team culture itself is another layer for you to think about of okay, well, here we are working as a team over here. How are we working with another team? And then we have another layer is a national or local culture. So national culture like the US, UK, Germany, right? So I go a little deeper into the local culture. It's like within the US is big. So you have the culture, the people working in New York is maybe a little bit the style will be different than California. That's local culture. And then the last one is individual style. This is how each individual of us are different than the other, right? So there are a few layers here when you're talking about leading, inspiring, coordinating, collaborating with your team players in a global context. It's like, please consider this, right? So you can understand better of how you can communicate that, right? So when we're talking about one thing, like for example, one priorities, are we on the same page? Like we might think that we are on the same page, but when we don't get the result, and one colleague was saying that, okay, well, let's explore. You might assume otherwise, and another colleague might think otherwise. Like, are we really on the same page with the communication, with the layers of context like that, right? So, how are we going to be able to, are we able to understand that we are really talking about the same thing? So, this is the challenge. So, I'm going to dive deeper now into the cultural context for you to get some nuance. So I used a framework from Erin Meyer, and her book is called Culture Map. And this is a book I highly recommend for anybody who work across culture, right? A great book. Please grab a book. Even though the book was written a while back, but the context still useful. So she talked about 8 dimensions of how we can look into the communication style, the leadership, the how they lead, how to make a decision. So I go, one by one. The first one, high and low context. This is the way that people communicating. So high context country is like Japan, and most of the Asian countries have high context, meaning they're not gonna spell out everything that they mean, right? So you might need to look at some cues, and then maybe you need to read between the line or look between the line of what are they saying. And low context, the U.S. Is a low context culture. It means that you spell out most of everything in the communication, and when the Asian culture, how we talk. Like I came from Thailand. What I will show you in a bit and how it looked different. The way that we communicate in Asia uh, sometimes go around, and not getting to the point, which is different than here. Now, second point, direct and indirect negative feedback. This is straightforward. In some culture, it's easy to provide negative feedback, just like Germany, right? And the third one, egalitarian versus hierarchical. So you're talking about um, the way that you lead. Are we equal, right? And then most of the Asian country they respect hierarchy. So it's more on okay, if my boss is sitting in the meeting, I will not say anything unless it's my responsibility. Then number four, consensual versus top down. This is how the people in the culture making a decision, like in consensual culture, just like Japan. Everybody will need to make a decision, a group decision, align first. Top down, take less time from the top downward. Number five, tax-based and relationship-based. So tax-based is more on this is a trusting dimension. So in the US, it's more tax-based, meaning I will trust you when you deliver. When you deliver consistently, I trust you. But when it comes to relationship-based culture, I won't do business with you unless I know you. Sometimes it go beyond just I just know you. Sometimes I need to go to know your family or where you graduated and things like that as well. It could go into that extent. I'm not sure if that's still the case right now, but it could. Now, number six, confrontational versus avoid confrontation, straightforward. Number seven, linear time, flexible time. Now you're talking about being punctual. Some country are very punctual. If you go to um, a, a s- a train in Switzerland, you can count on a dot of the minute, right? And how punctual it is to ride on a train. And in number eight is principle first versus application first. So this is how people influence in that culture. It's like principle first is more on we're talking about a concept and theory before we're talking about something else. Application first, we're talking about facts, numbers, thing like that, and we can conclude into uh, how we convince each other. So these are, in a nutshell, please go and read a book. It is very useful. So what I'm going to show you here today um, is the national culture, like how different they are. I have Germany, Thailand. I put Thailand because that's where I came from originally, so it has a lot of influence. China, US, Brazil. So I try to make a different country from different regions. As you can see, um, Thailand is all the way over here. When I saw the chart the first time, I was surprised as well. I was like, oh, okay. And then as you can see, China, high context country, right? But when it comes to um, receiving and providing direct negative feedback, a little more perceptive than Thailand. We don't provide negative feedback. Um, when it comes to Germany, it's easier, right? That culture is like that. I give you negative feedback easy. Right? As you can see, there are differences between different culture, all the way. As you can see, the US, low context. Um, not so well in the middle of providing negative feedback, so not too easy, not too difficult. Egalitarian, so like to debate, like to share, right? Leading. When it comes to making a decision, though, toward into the top down, right? In the U.S., this what I found a little bit interesting. And then when it comes to the trust, right? U.S. is more tax based. So what good about tax based is you can easily build the trust, but then it's more transactional. So when you don't do business with anymore with this one colleague, then kind of forget and then move on and build another trust, right? When it comes to relationship focused culture, then the relationship is there. Confrontational, Germany is leading in terms of I will be straightforward. I will be in your face when it comes to times to debate and disagreeing, right? And be straightforward. And of course, German culture punctual. Right? When it comes to Asian, um, generally, and then Brazil. So these are the cultural contexts that I just want to show you on the deeper dynamic of when we are leading a global team. Um, I give you a good example here. I have one executive that I'm working with. He's from Brazil, and he was given a feedback from one culture, not Germany, but high over here in providing negative feedback. And then it was hurting, right? So because of the context over here. And then when I show him this graph, and it's like, now I get it because you know, they're providing all the context laid on the table, and it just I feel like they had to tell me everything in my face, so I felt a little bit reluctant, right? So that's from the culture perspective. And then when you add the personal style, that add into it, right? So the person have different perception and perspective. But the culture has a lot to do with the way that we perceive things within the culture and how we even provide a feedback. If you feel reluctant providing feedback, maybe you can look into this. How is your culture? Your team culture map. What is it like when you lead a global team? Do you know um, their individual style, the national culture, and then also how are you going to lead with your team culture, right, within the corporate culture? So there are layers over there. So I can give you a case study. So this company, ABC Technology, it's a fake name. It's a fintech company. The company is a merger of three companies because of the strategic combination, right? They merge a year before I start working with the leader of the team, and they have offices worldwide. But the team that I was working with the engineering and product team, they have the challenges that because they have to produce a product working with the engineering team, but because they have so many products from three companies combined, and not all the products are working because they have three companies, so not every product will be viable for all three. The challenge is they have people working from different countries, but there's no progress on the either the new customer or what product are they going to do? Are they going to create one? Are they going to pick one from the existing one or add value? And there's no progress. It's just a lot of context around the new team culture, right? So we look into the team dynamics and also looking at the culture of the team, where the national culture, right? So we have the team culture that's yet to be defined because they are coming together from three different companies, three different products. And then we have the country, which is national culture, and the local team culture itself, right? We have a global team and the local team, national local team, probably the culture team of the team itself, and then the national context. As you can see, the team in India is a little bit more reserved in terms of how they're gonna speak up, right? When it comes to the US, and we'll lay everything out, talk about everything, and would people feel offended to provide that much context? Well, we don't know, right? Unless we set up the right expectation. Direct feedback, right? German provide direct feedback. So the team culture itself, and then the national culture that combine within a team that make a little interesting in terms of layers. So we have discussed on how we can align the team so we can move forward and build the team culture to be better so we can actually get the product out of the door, right? So the first thing is not a one-time thing, just letting you know it's work in progress, right? The first thing is to understand the context that we did and then provide communication framework, right? Choose the framework that you within your team, how you're going to communicate, right? In this situation, we use a coaching model framework, meaning how you coach and how you provide feedback. Everybody will be given the tools to do it correctly. And then design thinking for problem solving, how they're going to solve the problem, right? And they use some of the Scrum in there already. And then accountability framework. It's called RACI, IACI, right? So to know who's doing what, so they know exactly who's taking accountability. Then when we provide the tools, we agree upon the next one. We agree upon on what we're gonna do. What are we gonna be using? Are we agree that these tools are useful and we're gonna be able to use it in the next meeting and be explicit about what we're going to be using instead of just I'm trying to use this and let's test it out. Right? So everyone feel that is safe, and then create a safe space, meaning this is interesting because one time I was working with a client, they were talking about safe space, but then one employee was just venting about everything and then complaining. So the safe space doesn't mean the space that you will go and vent or complain because it's a safe space. So this is a different safe space. You need to define the safe space in your culture to just make it work. Like, for example, if this is not okay for me, I will raise my hand and I will let you know. Right. So these are the agreement that you need to have within your team, setting your team norms, right? And then the next step, go to problem solving session. There's a lot of problem to be solved on the product, what they're going to choose, and create priorities on how we're going to move forward, right? So they have a clear accountability, make it mandatory that everyone need to vote in and be in the session, and then continue to pivot, right? Not every session going to work, but at the end, they need to reflect on it, on how um, how are we doing? Are we doing okay? Are we making progress? What do we like about it? Right. Now we get to the full competency, right? The full C. Why do I add this in? Because of all those changes, the cultures, the dynamics, and everything else that we need to be aware of leading a global team. And these four competencies uh, being done by 13 researchers. That was launched in 2021. The name of the research is quite long. So it's over here, right? It has the name over here. It means that these are four critical competency that any leaders, or I would say every employee, should master in the future, but the future is already now, right? So we need to consider mastering these four competency, four skills to be able to work effectively and be future ready. So the first one, creativity. As in moving forward, AI will think for us sometimes, so will do a lot of work for us. But then creativity is the ability to think divergently. We need to find ways to think differently to be able to leverage the tools that we have, right? To come up with new ideas, right? The AI can help us generate and then create more, right? So we can leverage from that. Without creativity, then um, you're gonna be brand. Just everything that AI given will not be any more creative, right? So we need to add on the humanness of the creativity in there. The second competency, critical one, critical thinking. This is to develop analytical and evaluative capabilities. It has to do with decision making and how you calculate all the options and be able to move forward. AI would is very good at critical thinking. They will analyze a lot of situation. But because AI is already doing that, we can't outsource it all the way. We also need to be able to understand the critical components of each one of them. As I mentioned, the world is interconnected. When you make a decision to solve the problem in one area, it affects another. And that's how we need to get better at critical thinking, utilizing the resources and the AI. Communication, it's very broad, right? We're talking about communication all the time, but moving forward, it will be more authentic communication because in writing, written words, AI will help you write, right? But then how are you going to show your authenticity? That's how important it is in communication. How are you going to be able to tell whether or not the person behind the camera talking to you is you with your authenticity and not AI? And that's how we need to get master at in terms of your uniqueness as a human being, as an individual, and then be able to communicate with empathy, right? And then be more inclusive in the way that you communicate, because in a global environment, it's easily the conflict can rise easily because of the miscommunication based on different context and culture, right? So effective communication moving forward will be authenticity, uh, will be empathy, and then active listening. These days, um, people don't listen to each other much more. When it comes to presence in communication is less. So when you have active listening skill, it will help you with your authenticity and presence in communication. And these are the things that AI can't do, right? So collaboration, very clear. Everybody probably have worked on a collaboration um, in some shape or form already. But what it is that one layer down of this competency is the ability to have emotional intelligence and not getting too frustrated when you don't get the thing that you want from your colleagues, right? And um, be a little more patient in collaboration, in understanding, in slowing down to hear what the other party have to say and understand their West perspective. So these are you know, the sub-competency of the collaboration piece. And these are the four critical competencies that any leaders, uh, every employee, I would say, should have and master to be able to work effectively in the current business dynamic. And I have a recommendation, the actionable tips for you to improve the four competencies. I align with what I just shared in the example, the case study. To be able to have a team, global team working together, you need a culture, right? If your team culture is not working well, you may need to build a new team culture. But following the framework, right, the communication framework that you agree upon, create um, if you're gonna provide like negative feedback, you do it the same way that is to be expected from the framework. You know what to do. You do coaching. How are you gonna solve the problem, right? So agree upon to build the culture first, and that competency are communication and then collaboration. Another action that you can do is to encourage problem solving practice. So make it more when you go solve a problem as a team, have the framework to get started, and then you start creating priorities together. So when you do problem solving together using different tools, then it's going to help with creativity and then also with the critical thinking to help people think. And then the last action that you may implement right away is to schedule the brainstorm session in the brainstorm, a creative brainstorming session, it has to be done regularly, right? So you can brainstorm on the new products, you can brainstorm on the new way of work, how are we going to be working better together, brainstorm on the problems, um, and then the solutions, right? So, but we can't do this part well unless we do this part. So you need to agree upon first on the communication that you're going to be doing, the tools that you're going to use to be able to align and have to create a safe space. Because if you don't get that done, you don't get a team norm, right? When you get started with this, let's do brainstorming. You're probably not going to get to the end easily, right? Because no psychological safety. Uh, they just share whatever that they think are useful, not within the framework. So these are the action um, items that you could start implementing within your teams right away. So that said, I have been speeding. I hope it's been I hope it's been useful for you. So now it's time for any questions if you may have.
So yeah, I'd like to start by saying thank you for the great presentation. We do have one question at this time. So they say managing cultural diversity is a real challenge in terms of business ethics. In this regard, should companies prioritize a unified global corporate culture, or should they integrate local cultures while maintaining a global vision?
Corporate culture is the one that you should maintain anyway, because typically corporate culture is more like the umbrella of everything.
Mm-hmm.
However, um, if the local culture, you can be specific, right? So if the local culture is like provide money under the table in some countries, people do do that, and that's illegal. Then if you don't allow, typically you shouldn't allow that anyway, right? So ethically, you shouldn't allow that. Then it shouldn't be a local culture that's well accepted in a corporate. What I'd like to highlight a little bit is that regardless of the national culture, when you create a good team culture and a good corporate culture, then the national culture will be less influenced, right? So the team culture will take more place in the influencing part. So the team, when the team culture is strong enough, the national culture, even though it's a nuance, right? But then the way that you can shape the team to working in the team and the style of the team, you can create that, and it will help you to lead better, regardless of what the national culture is going to be.
Great, thank you. And I have a question. So I know that you showed us the country mapping tool where,
Mm-hmm.
you pick different countries. Like where should someone get that kind of information? Like how do you
Right.
figure out,
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. I forgot to mention, I got it
Hmm.
from erinmeyers .com. Go
Okay.
there. I don't get a
Hmm.
commission.
Hmm.
Go there and you can just buy the tool and use it within your
Hmm.
team. I'm a big fan of her work, right? So go and utilize it. And if you have any question, feel free to reach out as well. So
Hmm.
maybe I just do this first
Hmm.
while we're talking here. So
Hmm.
yeah, feel free to go there and utilize the tool. However, to go there and understand the context is one thing, but how
Hmm.
are you going to be able to implement it? That's another,
Hmm.
right? So you can have the context, but then what, right?
Yeah.
So how are
Yeah.
we going to how are we going to be able to utilize that context to use within
Hmm.
your team culture?
Hmm. And I know you've, of course, understand the usefulness of coaching. Do you recommend, like, is coaching useful for everyone, in the company, or is it more, this is how you would train your leadership, and then they would go and implement the changes?
Well, coaching is always useful, right?
Mhm.
For everyone in the
Mhm.
company. However, on the cost standpoint, it may not be
Mhm.
viable for everybody within the company. That's why it's not democratized,
Yeah.
not for everyone at the moment. Um,
Mhm.
but at least if
Mhm.
if the team members or the managers
Mhm.
know how to do coaching in the right way, um,
Mhm.
coaching has different style. But when we wanted to leader as coach, that is to pull out the potential of the employee. and not
Mm,
coaching on the skill, because coaching on the skill is more telling and teaching, right? So when it comes to lead as coach, meaning you pull out the potential of the person, there'll be lots of asking questions, right?
mm,
So there are frameworks to follow. When managers know how to do that, you might not need a coach outside, right? So at least you have the tools to do it.
mm. Perfect. I'll just take another minute in case anyone has any other questions they would like to add into the chat. Um, and and yeah. Mhm.
So let me stop share.
Mhm. Perfect. Um, so I think that's everyone's questions at this time, but definitely feel free to reach out to me or Nannapat later, and we'll be sending a copy of the presentation to everyone as well as a link to the recording. So a big thank you to you and a big thank you to everyone who's joined us today.